I was carrying a plate of my wife's leftover peach cobbler when my grandson said something that stopped me cold in the doorway. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October. The leaves on the oak trees along my son's street had gone full amber, the kind of color that makes you slow down your car just to look. I had driven 40 minutes from my place in Clarksville to drop off the cobbler my wife, Margaret, had made too much. She always did, and to spend a couple of hours with my grandson, Thomas. He was 7 years old, small for his age, with his father's dark eyes and a habit of talking with his hands that he got from nobody I could identify. My son, Daniel, had been in the middle of a custody arrangement with his ex-wife, Nicole, for about 8 months by then. They had split the previous February, not loudly, not dramatically, at least not from the outside. Daniel told me the marriage had simply run dry. Nicole told her mother something different, but that was not my business. What mattered was Thomas, and both parents seemed to agree on that, so the arrangement was working. Thomas spent weekdays with Nicole and weekends with Daniel. I visited on Saturdays when I could. I knocked twice, and Daniel opened the door. He looked tired in the way that divorced fathers of young children tend to look, not broken, just worn thin at the edges. He waved me in, told me Thomas was in the backyard, and disappeared back toward whatever game was on television. I set the cobbler on the kitchen counter and walked through the sliding glass door to the backyard. Thomas was sitting on the bottom step of the deck, not playing, not doing much of anything, just sitting there with his hands on his knees, staring at the grass. I called his name and he looked up. He smiled, but it was a careful smile. The kind you give someone when you are glad to see them, but you are also thinking about something else. I sat down next to him on the step. I told him his grandmother had sent cobbler. He said that was good. I asked if he wanted to go inside and have some. He said maybe in a minute. We sat quietly for a moment. The neighbor's dog was barking somewhere over the fence. The sky was that flat gray that October skies get in Tennessee before the temperature drops. Then Thomas looked up at me with those dark eyes and said, "Grandpa, can you tell Dad that I don't want to eat breakfast at Mom's anymore?" I looked at him. I asked him what he meant. He shrugged the way 7-year-olds shrug when they are trying to make something small. "I just don't feel good after I eat there, in the mornings." I asked him what kind of not good. He thought about it for a second and then said, "My stomach hurts, and then I get really tired, like I can't keep my eyes open." I kept my voice even. I asked how long that had been happening. He said, "A long time. That is the thing about children. They do not have a good relationship with time. A long time could mean 2 weeks or 2 months. But the way he said it flat, matter of fact, like he had already accepted it as just a part of his mornings, that is what settled into my chest like a stone. I asked him what he ate for breakfast at his mother's house. He said usually oatmeal, sometimes eggs. I asked if it happened every morning or just sometimes. He said mostly every morning that he ate the oatmeal. I did not say anything dramatic. I did not let my face change. I put my arm around his shoulders and told him I was glad he told me, and that I would talk to his dad, and that he did not need to worry about a thing. He leaned against my side for a moment, and then he said he was ready for cobbler. We went inside. I did not say anything to Daniel in front of Thomas. We ate cobbler together at the kitchen table, and I listened to Thomas tell us about a kid at school who had brought a lizard in his backpack. Normal Saturday afternoon things. When Thomas went upstairs to find a book he wanted to show me, I leaned across the table and told Daniel quietly what his son had said. Daniel looked at me the way parents look when they are trying to decide if they are overreacting. He said Thomas had always had a sensitive stomach. He said Nicole was a good mother. He said it was probably just nerves about the new school year. I told him I understood all of that. I told him I was not accusing anyone of anything. I said I thought we should take Thomas to see Dr. Calloway, his pediatrician, just to rule things out, just to have a baseline. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. We made the appointment for the following Thursday. I drove Thomas myself, because Daniel had a work call he could not move. Thomas sat in the passenger seat with his backpack on his lap, even though we were not going to school, which I thought was just a habit, and he asked me if doctors could tell what you ate by looking at your blood. I said yes, actually, they could. He thought about that and then looked out the window and did not say anything else. Dr. Calloway was a tall man in his late 50s who had been Thomas's doctor since Thomas was born. He had a quiet, careful manner, the kind that works well with both children and anxious adults. He examined Thomas, asked him questions, made him laugh twice, and then sent him with the nurse for a blood draw while he spoke with me in the hallway. He asked me to walk him through everything Thomas had told me. I did, in the same order, with the same words Thomas had used. The doctor listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. He said he wanted to run a broader panel than the standard. He said he wanted to be thorough. He said the symptoms Thomas described, the stomach pain, the unusual fatigue in the mornings, could have a dozen explanations, most of them unremarkable. But he said he would rather know. I told him I would rather know too. The results came back in 4 days. Dr. Calloway called Daniel, not me, which was right. Daniel called me 20 minutes later. His voice was strange, not upset exactly. Something beyond upset, something quieter and colder than that. He said the doctor had found elevated levels of a sedative compound in Thomas's system, something that did not belong in a 7-year-old boy who had not been prescribed any medication. I sat down in my kitchen chair. Daniel said the doctor was flagging it for follow-up. He used the words possible accidental ingestion, but he also said the pattern of symptoms Thomas described every morning, specifically after oatmeal at his mother's house, made accidental ingestion a difficult explanation to hold on to. I asked Daniel what he was going to do. He said he did not know yet. He said he needed to think. I told him he did not have much time to think. What followed was the hardest 2 weeks I can remember in a long time. Daniel hired a family law attorney named Patricia Holt, a woman with a small office downtown and the kind of calm that comes from having seen everything at least twice. She advised Daniel to document everything, say nothing to Nicole directly, and request an emergency hearing based on the medical findings. The court moved faster than I expected. A guardian ad litem was appointed for Thomas. There was a temporary custody modification while the investigation was ongoing. Thomas came to stay with Daniel full-time. I drove over most evenings that first week. Thomas seemed lighter, somehow, now that he was not going back and forth. He slept better. The morning fatigue disappeared. He started eating breakfast with his father, and he ate all of it and then went outside to play, which is what 7-year-olds are supposed to do. What came out in the weeks that followed was this. Nicole had been in a relationship with a man named Wade for most of the previous year. Wade lived 45 minutes away, in a town called Ridgemont. The relationship had apparently been serious enough that Nicole wanted time, morning time, weekday time, that Thomas made difficult. A drowsy child sleeps late. A drowsy child does not interrupt phone calls. A drowsy child is easier to manage on a Tuesday morning when you have somewhere you would rather be. That was the conclusion the investigators reached. That was what the toxicology supported. That was what Nicole eventually, through her attorney, did not deny. She did not admit to it in the direct, explicit way that would have made a jury feel satisfied. She entered a plea agreement. The charge was child endangerment. She received 2 years of probation, mandatory parenting classes, and supervised visitation every other weekend, with a supervisor present. Her parental rights were not terminated. That was the part that hit Daniel hardest. That was the part he called me about at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, his voice flat and exhausted. I listened, and I did not try to make it sound like more than it was. The law is what it is. 2 years probation for putting a sedative in your child's breakfast is not enough. I think that. Daniel thinks that. Patricia Holt, who chose her words carefully, said only that it was within the sentencing guidelines. What I kept coming back to in the days after that was Thomas on the back deck step, his hands on his knees. The way he said it, not urgently, not dramatically, just plainly, the way children say things when they have been carrying something alone for a while, and they have finally found the right person to say it to. He did not come to me because he understood what was happening. He came to me because his stomach hurt and he was tired and he trusted me to listen. That was the whole of it. I thought about how easy it would have been to say he probably just had a sensitive stomach. I thought about how reasonable that explanation was. How many times do we reach for the reasonable explanation because the other one is too uncomfortable to hold? I did not do that. And I am glad I did not do that. But I want to be honest with you. The impulse was there. For about 30 seconds after he said it, my mind was already constructing the reasonable explanation. Kids get tired. School is stressful. Nicole made oatmeal, and maybe it just did not sit right. 30 seconds. That is how long it would have taken to walk away from what Thomas needed. Daniel has full custody now. Thomas sees his mother on the scheduled supervised visits. I am told the visits are cordial. Thomas is doing what children do, which is adapt, which is survive, which sometimes looks from the outside like forgetting, but is really just a kind of grace that children have and adults tend to lose somewhere along the way. He asked for a dog in December. A big one, he said. He wanted one that would sleep at the foot of his bed. Daniel took him to the shelter the first Saturday of the new year. They came home with a 3-year-old yellow lab named Biscuit, who immediately destroyed one of Daniel's good shoes and then fell asleep with his enormous head in Thomas's lap. I was there when they walked in with him. I watched Thomas's face. There are things you carry with you for a long time. The image of that boy on the deck step, his hands on his knees, waiting to see if I would brush him off or lean in. I will carry that for the rest of my life. And I will carry his face when that dog walked through the door. Because that is the face of a child who has been through something and come out the other side of it. Not unchanged, not undamaged, but safe, loved, home. I told him that day that he had been very brave. He thought about that for a second and then he said, "I wasn't brave, Grandpa. I was just really tired." He did not mean it the way it hit me. He meant he was tired of feeling sick in the mornings. But it stayed with me, because I think there is something true in it that goes beyond what he intended. Sometimes the things we finally say out loud are not the products of courage. They are the products of exhaustion. We carry things until we cannot carry them anymore. And then we set them down in front of someone we trust and we say, "Here, I have been holding this. Can you help?" Thomas set it down in front of me on a Saturday afternoon in October, with amber leaves on the oaks and his grandmother's peach cobbler on the counter inside. I was there. I listened. I did not look for the reasonable explanation. If you are the person a child comes to, whoever you are, however tired you are, however much easier it would be to let it go, please be there. Please listen. Please take it seriously before you decide it is nothing. Because the thing about children is they do not come to you unless they believe you will. And the thing about that belief is you only get one chance to deserve it. If something in this story stays with you, share it with someone who has a child in their life. You never know who needs to hear it today.